Footsteps in the dark, a cry in the night, the wind in the trees, and the beating of a heart all lead to Claude Chabot's theater of the fantastic, where mayhem meets mystery.
Aroma Wine is proud to sponsor the latest installment of Claude Chabot's Theater of the Fantastic. Relax and listen as you enjoy a refreshing glass of Aroma's Beaujolais Nouveau from our charming and convenient Long Island winery. That's A-R-O-M-A Aroma Wine, made in Long Island for discerning palates nationwide. À votre santé, mesdames et messieurs. To your health, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Our drama concerns a woman who can't seem to stop talking.
She has something on her mind, perhaps?
Claude, so glad you could join us. Yes, I think she has something on her mind. She won't let anybody get a word in edgewise. But where has life been taking you, Claude?
To my little house in the Marlborough Mountains. Such a calm and tranquil place for this old soul. Some of us need quiet to contemplate our lives.
Quite right. An unexamined life is not worth living, and all that. Well, our drama concerns that same need for quiet, contemplation, and living life differently from the neighbors. But I think Janie took it too far.
People are often difficult to live with.
True. Our character solved that problem.
In a unique way.
Perhaps we may drop in right now and listen to They Never Found a Body, the latest installment in Claude Chabot's Theater of the Fantastic.
I'm glad you moved in, so the house will look like something again. It's sad seeing it run down after knowing the way it used to be. The lawn was always neat, mowed and trimmed. Not like now. It's been vacant for 2 years. But nothing else. No shrubs or flowers out front. A little severe, you know? The backyard is filled with small trees. Oh, but you know that. It's like a forest or a cemetery with that shrine to her husband. Ever look close at that shrine? Mrs. Rohrthorpe built it. She was good with her hands. She used concrete and stone like an artist. She had built all kinds of things back there. Bird baths and seed feeders and gnome statuettes. I saw gnomes everywhere the first time I was invited. They looked like an invading army. She even made little concrete coffins out of tin cans for some of the squirrels that died. She had a little graveyard in a corner with grave markers and everything. I never thought it was strange, but I was careful not to tell anybody. People talk. People used to say it was the windows that made the place so forbidding. The windows looked clean, but the shades were always drawn shut. That was odd. Never saw anybody looking out, never opened either, even on a warm day. At least never any in front. It didn't help that the house is at the end of a gravel road. It looked abandoned somehow, empty. They said that she stayed in all day long and did God knows what behind those windows. But the reputation wasn't fair. She wasn't strange, at least I didn't think so. Just shy. But she did go out to the market and the dry cleaners and all the places wives go to do for their husbands and families. She was married for years until the Mr. disappeared. Nice people. You think after what I said they weren't? If the mailman brought your mail to her house by mistake, she'd walk it right over. She was always quiet, but her husband always said hello. Otis, his name was. He had a little company, I think. Plumbing or roofing. Something practical, I don't know. He made a good living and they seemed perfectly normal. Well, they didn't have children. The neighbors gossiped about that. Wondered about their love life. Used to say I was getting between them. Imagine! Just because I like to chat with Otis about my garden. That Otis, he used to say all kinds of things to me when Janie wasn't around.
Janie's out of town overnight, Agnes, at her mother's.
Used to tell me that I'd be a real looker as a blonde. Imagine! But that's the way he used to talk.
If you'd like to stop by.
I never paid him any mind. Otherwise, they were almost always together at the movies and the supermarket, and they'd say hello, and everyone liked them, even if they kept to themselves. There were other couples without children, so it wasn't that strange. People in the village talked to them everywhere. Or he did to them. She was quiet. But back at the house, they kept to themselves. No visitors, no friends, no family, no relatives, nobody. Not one visitor in all those years that I lived here across the street. They seemed sad somehow because of that, at least to me. But never anything but sad. Lonely, maybe. Isolated, for sure. Maybe because she had no children. She loved to care for animals. Hurt animals or abandoned ones. Birds and lost cats and what have you. Squirrels. The baby squirrel. That's what started the whole business. She loved that little squirrel. But not Otis. He didn't like it at all. Tell you the truth, she was a little chilly with Otis. See them together and he'd do all the talking. She'd just smile. Never a word. But she was happy and alive with the squirrel. I'd see her in the backyard with the squirrel on her shoulder once he grew up and was tame. He'd hold on tight while she raked the leaves under that little forest of hers, or weeding the garden, or what have you. She'd sometimes talk to him. Not like a crazy person, but the way you talk to a favorite cat or dog. See how the branches of those trees come right up to the top floor windows out back? She let them in that way. Yep, the little babies, as she called them, came right into the house. I mean, that is, later. She had quite a few for a while. No, I don't think Otis and Janie got along as married people. From what I've told you, they weren't affectionate out in public. I don't know what they thought of one another, except they never argued. She used to say to me, "Why don't you marry him now, Agnes? You do want to, don't you? You dyed yourself blonde for Otis, didn't you?" You see, she was just insecure and would say all sorts of things when Otis and I would talk and such. Sometimes he'd jokingly put his arm around me, laugh, and say, "Let's get rid of that Janie." Imagine, he even invited me along on one of his hunting trips. The idea! He was a card, all right. Otis loved hunting. I think he liked to kill things to relax. Imagine! But those hunting trips, they were a big strain in their marriage. And she'd tell me, how awful it was for her that her husband killed deer and such. He made her dress and render the animals that he'd hunted. When she finally would come out, she looked shaken. No, much more than that. Traumatized. Each time it seemed to get worse for her. It affected her badly. I asked her one day if she ever complained to him about how it upset her, but she just looked at me. She said he was always asking her to join him in the woods in Maine. You know, he disappeared on a hunting trip up there. He kept nagging at her to come with him, and when she finally did, he disappeared.
Oh!
She had the lady from the supermarket care for the little animals while she was gone. I was out of town myself at the time and found out all about it later. She was too frightened, she said, to go on with them, so she'd driven up with him to the lodge, and she'd stayed in a hotel in town. She brought her bike up on the car rack where they usually strapped the dead animal. Don't know how they would have brought it back if he'd killed anything. Mrs. Rawthorpe knew about where he hunted. She knew exactly where it was, even though she never went with him, out there in the middle of nowhere. Isolated. Rough country. At that lodge house he rented deep in the forest. Guess he told her often enough where it was. She used to tell me, too. I checked it once on a map in the library. Real isolated, believe you me. Never could figure out why she went on that trip. They never did find a body. She had the old car locked up in the garage. Got around on that bike of hers well enough, though, and by taxi until she bought the other car. But she never sold the first one. I think it was all she had left of him, even if the marriage wasn't happy, because he always did the driving. I guess she felt something for him. Marriage is a funny thing. Never been myself. Never met the right man. Well, sure, Otis and I got on some. Friends, you know. I mean, I got the idea he was thinking of me in that way men have, but I never missed it. How could I do that to Janie? I had my job and nieces and nephews. Never went in for that romantic nonsense. I think she did. But Otis wasn't really her type. I kind of liked him. Maybe if I'd met him earlier. But he wouldn't leave her. Didn't want to pay alimony. Oh, what am I saying? I am talking so. Well, he must have had a good life insurance policy, because she didn't go to work or remarry after Otis disappeared. Somehow, she finally had him declared legally dead. Took a while, with all kinds of waiting periods and documentation, newspaper ads here and there, but she did. It was around that time that she went in for caring for her animals in a big way. And that's when people started calling her the Squirrel Lady. Because you'd see all the squirrels she fed hopping around her front yard and the backside of the roof. Squirrel Lady, that's what they all called her. I never did. I would never call people names. But you knew something was a little funny. I mean later, not at first. I think some people are made for people and others are not. I can understand that. But she didn't seem sad. She even seemed happy after Otis disappeared. I sure missed him.
Agnes.
He used to stop by. He'd stop by because he was just a big flirt.
Agnes.
No regrets, if you know what I mean. Like that French song says, Je ne regrette nothing. Not her neither. And life was easy after he was gone. Disappeared. Peaceful, even. Even though she didn't have to budget, she wore plain, nice clothes that she bought from the Salvation Army, riding around town with that old bike she had, and she smiled all the time, as if she were listening to some beautiful, secret music. She even started talking to herself a little and laughing out loud, so mothers would pull their children close to them when they passed her on the street. Maybe because she lived alone and she forgot herself. Eventually, she had groceries delivered to the house and rarely went out, except for the backyard. She'd mow the front lawn, and that was the only time you'd see her. She did start inviting me in for coffee or tea now and then when she'd see me from out front. And the house was neat as a pin. Simple, but pretty. She had a quiet taste in her home and herself. Even her old clothes looked good. This must be around 68 or so, and she looked like an elderly hippie. Independent, but never crazy. Nothing like that. Always seemed right in the head with me. Just eccentric or independent-minded. I liked her. It was just the squirrels. So many of them that she fed. And some she kept in a room upstairs. That was what I meant about the branch. The little lame ones could come out and exercise on the branch. Isn't that silly? But she thought about them that way. She was sensitive. The Squirrel Lady. The name stuck and gave her a reputation. She was hurt by that name and what people said, and came out hardly at all after that. The house being isolated didn't help. There weren't any neighbors next to her, just me across the street. Her house was surrounded by wooded lots back then. Now they've built that house next door. She wouldn't have liked that. In fact, she owned the lot, and it was sold right after she died. She left all her money and house to some animal foundation. That's when they realized how many squirrels had been in the house. How many? I don't know, 30 or 40. On top of all that, I never knew it, but she still had Otis's business, had a man run it for her. Anyway, with the life insurance and the business, she had more than $5 million in the bank when she died. Can you believe it? $5 million. And her shopping at the Salvation Army. But, like I said, she bought those used clothes and made them look good. Never went out to movies or anywhere much. And then, not at all. Never traveled. When she died, her millions really convinced people she was crazy. But some people find something in life, and for her, it was helping squirrels and other little animals. Did I mention the cats? No? Well, there were plenty of those, too, but not nearly as many as the squirrels. She kept the cats inside, away from the little squirrels. Don't know how she did it. Maybe she should have left him. Otis, I mean. She didn't care for Otis. Not really. Not like I did. I mean, you know, as a friend, a neighbor. Maybe he didn't like her so much either. I don't know. She and I got to watching the Sullivan Show on Sunday nights, the last 2 or 3 years it was on. One night when I was over, she started talking about Otis. Now that was strange.
You ever think about that trip we took to Maine? That last trip? How you showed up out of nowhere? How we agreed never to talk? Because it's painful for me still. It's better forgetting, right, Agnes? It's better that way. He's been gone almost 10 years. I think of him sometimes and wish I had arranged for a funeral, a memorial service. Guess I still could, but who would come now? His friends, if you can call them that, are all moved away or dead.
I thought that was odd. I mean, I reminded her that he had disappeared. I told her there was nothing to bury because his body was up in the woods somewhere. She looked up at me from pouring some tea for a second, looked at me funny, and laughed, and shook her head and said,
Yes, Agnes, but it would have put an end to it. A real funeral. A real resting place, not the thinking about him. If I had buried him. Did he feel pain when he disappeared? It was an accident, right, Agnes? Right, Agnes? You showed up in town out of nowhere, right, Agnes?
I mean, what could I say? He was up alone in the North Woods, I would say. She hoped he hadn't felt pain when it happened. Then she looked funny, and I said, maybe he had fallen and hit his head. Maybe.
Is that how it happened, Agnes? What if it had been me, Agnes? Something went wrong, right, Agnes? Something changed your mind about it all. It wasn't supposed to be that way.
What could I do but laugh in her face? He went up there all right, hunting. Period. He had to be, because I just happened to be in Vermont on vacation, and she got in touch with my job, and that's why, how I came to bring her home. That's how she wanted to remember his passing. Something swift, without pain. I mean, that's how it had to have happened, right? Without pain, that's what she said again and again, and without fear. It always seemed she said that as if she had known what happened. She must have imagined it many times. Then she went on and said,
He kept all his hunting things in the trunk, and I kept them there. Didn't want to disturb him. I mean, my memory of him. You know, it's amazing. I think of him more frequently now. He's never far from me.
That was odd. I asked her, you mean from your thoughts? And she looked up at me and answered,
Well, yes, Agnes. You know, he's never far from my thoughts. You know that. It was a good thing, Agnes, that you were visiting your sister in Vermont that summer, so you could meet me and drive the car back. Drive me right back. Right, Agnes? Right, Agnes? Right, Agnes?
I am talking so. I haven't gotten out lately. Don't see many people nowadays. I felt bad when Janie died, because of the way we found her. I mean, she always mowed that front lawn right up to the time she died. Must have been her late 70s. And then, for 2 weeks, it went untended. I started calling over on the phone. No answer. I went up to the house. Janie? Janie! No answer. So I called the police, and they found her in bed. Not a pretty sight in the middle of the summer. The autopsy revealed something, some aneurysm or something. I wasn't sure what that was, but they said it was something in the brain. Must have happened in her sleep. Instant death. Not a bad way to go, if you ask me. Same as her husband. I mean, I think so. Rapid, that is. And if you ask me, I thought she was one of the happiest people there ever was. At least after Otis was gone. Disappeared, I mean. I've missed seeing her mow the lawn. I miss her. So I'm glad you've bought the house. Good to see it occupied. I guess you'll have to remove the car. She sold the one she drove years ago, but held on to that one that belonged to Otis. And she stopped taking in the little animals after the last one died. Said she couldn't do it anymore, seeing her little babies die off. The only ones she ever loved, she said, were her little babies. Oh, you had it removed? I didn't see. I must have been out. Where? Where? The scrapyard? Saw them compacting it too? Oh, that's a relief. I mean, for you. The tires were deflated. You tried to open the trunk. What for? You found the keys in the car? The trunk was sealed? Well, what for? Oh, I don't know. She sealed in those things of his to remember him by. Just like one of those little tin can and concrete coffins she made for the squirrels. Oh, for the life of me, I don't understand why she never got rid of that car. As if she was holding on to... People used to ask me about it. It would have been better to have gotten rid of it so people wouldn't... It was just a '62 Impala. I liked her, but like I say, she was odd. Missed Otis a little when we both did. He was lovey-dovey to me more than once. Couldn't help but like him. I would have married him, but, well, not in my life, I guess. Never you mind what I say. It's the heat. Hope you got that car out easy. You watched them compact it, right? Must be on the way to the plant. Gone already? Oh my. There I go again. I have been talking my head off. Bring your children around someday. Nice to see children on this quiet block. Otis used to say, "Janie don't want children, Agnes, but I bet you'd give me a brood. Easy." Oh, that Otis. Otis and Janie. The odd couple. So, it's nice to have you in that house. Maybe people will forget.
Agnes.
Used to make me nervous, looking at the house all empty, with the car sitting in the garage.
Agnes.
Glad you got rid of it. Good riddance, too, because people talk. They did about her. About Janie.
Janie's out of town overnight, Agnes, at her mother's. If you'd like to stop by.
Poor Janie. Poor Otis. Poor me while I'm at it.
Aroma Wine is proud to have sponsored the latest installment of Claude Chabot's Theatre of the Fantastic. Our cast has included Susan Cohen DiStefano as the narrator and as Janie, Susan O'Doherty as Agnes, and Peter Pagano as Claude Chabot, and the spokesman from Aroma Wine, and Otis. Claude Chabot's Theatre of the Fantastic's latest installment may have come to an end, but Claude Chabot will return.
Claude Chabot's Theatre of the Fantastic was written, produced, and directed by Peter Pagano. Sound engineering and post-production services provided by Phil Lee